welcome everyone to our follow-up, really, to what we did last month. Now, you didn't have to be there last month. There was a video, but I think it's a topic that lends itself to, um, you don't have to have been part of that discussion in order to really appreciate how important this is. And I'm sure everyone has their views about how it impacts youth. So the last time we had a lot of people from different backgrounds, including educators and community members, parents. Following steps are simple ways to continue the conversation. Um, so I'm really asking people to kind of reflect on what it means. What do we mean by civics education? What do we mean by civics? Involvement in government, also involvement in the community. Just doing things around the community that strengthen the bonds within the community. So it can take a lot of different forms, and it can either be within a school setting or outside of a school setting. But I think that's what I really want everyone here to consider and to talk about. Now, I invite everyone to um, put their location in the chat and any kind of reflections you may already have or reasons for coming here and sharing your point of view and getting involved with the discussion. We are going to be breaking into smaller groups and groups of three, and we're going to give everybody about 15 minutes to actually have a discussion on this. So I just want to give you some questions to start with and some ideas. One thing is that we need to think about the places where young people could learn more about civic engagement within their communities and also community problem solving. As I said, this can happen in schools, after school programs, in youth organizations, community centers, or local groups. And what we really need to do is encourage young people to explore real issues that matter to their communities. And one of the ways to do that is to talk to the people in their communities, to go to go into places where they are, to maybe do surveys, maybe do interviews, so that they can find out what's important to the people in the community. Now, it's always about building connections, of course. Strong civic learning often goes through partnerships. When you connect with local organizations, community leaders, nonprofits, or civic groups that share an interest in supporting young people, these are ways that you can definitely increase the process of participation and involvement. Working together with these groups, with these other individuals, can create more opportunities for youth to participate in meaningful projects. And we've talked a lot about project-based learning over the months and how important that is in establishing a realistic way of interacting and learning about how the world works. So it's the other side of it is encouraging youth to take the initiative, to be leaders in their community, to be leaders among other students, other youth. Young people should be active participants, not just observers. We need to encourage students to identify issues they care about, ask questions, bring people together for dialogue, and propose solutions. When youth are trusted to take leadership roles, they develop confidence, responsibility, and a stronger sense of belonging. So when young people complete projects or engage in civics activities, they should share those stories with the broader community. They can find ways to have assemblies or put out presentations, make videos. I mean, there's a number of different ways that they can highlight what they've been doing. So what we're going to do, as I said, we're going to be breaking out into smaller groups so we can talk about these things. And I want you to reflect on your own experiences, and I want you to definitely talk with other people who are in your group and find out more about theirs. And I think that's one of the most important things we can do is to share our experiences so that we can learn from each other, because it really is all about that. It's a kind of a co-learning experience. And I really want, as I said, everybody to have that opportunity to really talk about what's going on where they live. And so I guess the questions I would ask at this point, the main question I would ask that you should be considering is, what opportunities or challenges do you see in your school or your community? Um, Identify areas where civics education dialogue across differences can be strengthened and discuss potential activities, dialogue circles, service learning projects, civic action initiatives, and community partnerships. And then share those examples amongst you. And then what we'll do is after we're done with our breakouts, we'll come back and we will review what we've learned from each other. And hopefully that will spark some new ideas and some ideas as far as forming partnerships are concerned. So I'm going to start this off. I know we don't have a large group, but I still want to break it up because I think smaller groups, even though we are not a lot, there aren't a lot of us here, can definitely um, create a better opportunity for people to speak to each other. So again, the main question, which I can put in the chat, is what opportunities or challenges do you see in your school or your community?
I wonder, Roger, if you could clarify the question a little bit more. So I wrote down what opportunities and challenges exist in your schools or and communities.
Yes.
And my question is challenges, opportunities for what? Challenges to what?
As far as civic engagement is concerned, I guess
Okay.
that wasn't clear. Um, so if you want
Okay.
to add that in there, regarding civic engagement, regarding youth and civic engagement, which is the topic. Uh,
Okay.
so if that's, hopefully that's pretty clear. And and you can also go off in different directions, but if we can just stay with that topic more or less, then when we come back together, we'll be able to, cover some of the things that we've been talking about.
Bob, I thought your observations were interesting about the more comfort with online interaction than face to face.
Oh, yeah, well, it's just an observation. It's a challenge. I'm looking for more opportunity, to be honest, than I'm aware of, but in working with youth. But my in my in my relationships with younger people is I find that and they openly talk about it, that youth generally more and more feel much more comfortable in online environments. And they literally like it's almost like their relationships are virtual. And even like a lot of their community building is done in the context of gaming online.
Yeah.
And this is really like, and it's not a negative thing necessarily, right? But I think it's something that it's a reality that we have to be aware of and work with. But I think it makes the creation of in-person spaces especially challenging because a lot, I maybe, who knows how many, a lot of them have a tremendous amount of, say, social anxiety and issues related to like the vulnerability of like um, face-to-face, in-person kinds of community. So I have found it very challenging to find spaces like that, which I think would be the most constructive, or to create them. So I don't know if people know of any opportunities or, where people are either able to make these kinds of, create these kinds of spaces, whether they're in a virtual environment or in-person environment. But I'd love to hear where there are pockets of these things that might be emerging.
Yeah, it actually raises an interesting question, which is how do you engage uh, youth or anyone in a virtual environment versus in person? I mean, there's a whole different kind of approach that has to take place, right?
Mhm. It's a good question. We had a very lively conversation. It wasn't to answer Bob's question, however, so I want to one of the things that where I work most closely with youth is through a project I've developed with my friend called Sweet Potato Comfort Pie, where we have and maybe you've heard of that, Pam, because you know a
I,
lot of people I
I
know, and you've worked with
actually,
Whoopi.
yeah, Rose McGee is our friend, old colleague. So,
Okay, so yeah, Rose and I started that,
oh,
and so one of the things that helps to engage the youth early on is just the baking process. So they're not just right in conversation with everybody right away, but they're actually throwing it down in the kitchen and measuring things and rolling out dough and doing that work in the kitchen. And then we have the conversation. Then we have the conversation, which we call pie identity, about what ingredients we bring to community to make it stronger. And there's different aspects of that engagement because there's the baking and the exploration around the baking. But then there's also a conversation of where will these pies go into community to make a difference. So then you get to explore the values of what are we doing here and how are we going to lift people up. Then there's storytelling through the whole thing because once you deliver the pies to the organizations and people that you've decided, you're building a relationship. And from that relationship springs stories of how we change people's lives. So yeah, you may have, Pam, I'm not sure what all you know about this, but if you know Rose, you understand part of our work.
I was wondering if the idea of civic engagement involved like community issues, um, things that are important to the people that live in the communities, issues that come up with challenges that exist. How do you approach those things without really getting too political, right? You don't want to turn into some kind of a partisan thing. You want to be able to do this in a way that you're really helping to lead them into a space where they can work together rather than against each other, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Let me add to that. What we found in the program that I have, the students find a issue that they care about. So there's this meaning in their lives, so they're more engaged and more likely to actually complete the project. And it's been a keystone to what the success we've had because they sort of own the project and they have not only the motivation, but when they complete the project, they have this sense of achievement. They feel good about themselves, and they feel like they're created something positive, and it sort of gives them a natural high, and that kind of activity does motivate students and actually gets them to participate in civic and local issues. Sometimes it might be trying to find a way of providing people who are, food challenged, or, it might be in the winter getting clothing for people who are, need clothing and things like that. And that's kind of a basic thing, but that oftentimes they're more complex. So I guess the point I'm making is that to get kids engaged, students engaged, it really helps to have something that's meaningful to them.
Yeah, and it creates a sense that's where the empowerment comes from too, right? Because
Yeah.
if there's an issue that's important to them, like global warming or something like that, where they look at it and they think that there's nothing they can do about it, or they just feel like it's just too big to challenge. If you give them the means by which they can actually address it and feel like they're going to make some kind of a difference,
Yeah.
that kind of gives them a lot of energy, right?
Yeah, I know it does, and it gives them self confidence. I mean,
Right.
if you had to pick one thing in education, this is my experience after over 50 years in education, self confidence is number one. If students have self confidence, they can achieve great things. Um, Sometimes they get beaten down, and sometimes they're not quote seen.
Mm.
They're not seen, so they disappear into the woodwork. But once they believe in themselves, they have agency, and they complete something positive. It's powerful. It's youth empowerment.
So I
Any,
love that. Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I was telling my group that we have a organization in our area south of Seattle where for 52 years you had the Black Collective coming together, and they have got members from 30 to 90. And these people have been all over the world, and they've got all sorts of experience in organizing, community building. And these men and women have done this work, but they never engaged youth. It's always been the adults running. And with this new world we're living in, they're hearing that youth not only are desiring for them to come and be seen, but also to train them in these skills of organizing and mobilizing that they have. I mean, at the very least, they just want to feel supported by a visible intergenerational Black community that for a lot of them is not even existent or something they just kind of hear about like a fable. So yeah, they're saying now let's do that. And they don't know how. And the realization that they need to talk to these youth and hear what exactly they're living through, what exactly they're feeling like they need help with, and then pulling the resources of those people in this group to again, map the assets and then map the desires to do this and then do the connecting, bridging kind of work.
Mhm.
We haven't done it, but we want to do it. And so we've begun. So, yeah.
So you are doing it, really, aren't you? I mean, you're just starting, but you're doing it because what you're doing is engaging the process. You're starting the process, and that's the most important step, obviously, because until you get started, until you at least try. And I think it's such a good example too for young people to see people in their communities that are doing things and that are sensitive and really want to create more justice in the community, for instance. That's the thing that creates the kind of ideals I think that really carry them beyond the sense of hopelessness that can dominate so many people.
Hmm. Well, I have a question for Kate about the pie thing, and I know I've heard a little bit about it before, and it's really very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. But my question is where, who are the kids who are engaged in this program, and where do they come from? You know what I'm saying? How, you know, um, like how did the process get started? You have that activity, right? But
Right,
then
right.
how do you connect it to youth?
We bake actively with local schools. So sometimes we might bake right within the school itself, or sometimes we might bake at a church and invite different student programs to come to the church. But the greatest student engagement is when we bake right at the school. And I go to the school and work with teachers and students, and the teachers identify students that want to be circle keepers and leaders. And then they take different roles within the kitchen and even in the circle process.
Okay.
So it's and we have an established presence in the Twin Cities, so different schools know about us and work with us.
Hmm.
But we actively work with community in terms of where people want to do a whole project for baking, and then we also have educational programs too. We say we're more than just a pretty pie. We actually do education programs to bring attention to educators that are doing exemplary work or some kind, like after George Floyd was killed, we had a whole series with the Minnesota Humanities Center called How Do We Breathe? And we worked with students as one group. But then we also worked with mothers, we worked with artists, we worked with counselors, and had different sessions with students being their own group. But the students do in their circles, as we identify where the pies go, it has kind of an uncanny way of surfacing community issues because they want to bring pies to people who are unhoused. I mean, we're going to do a baking on April 18th to bring pies to people who have been impacted by the ICE presence here in the Twin Cities.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think when you bring people together, especially people who are idealistic and want to help their community, I think there is a kind of synergy. I think there's a whole process of expanding their awareness of what needs to be done, and I think once they get that confidence, as I mentioned, I think they're ready to take on just about anything, I guess. And what you need to do is keep finding ways to channel that energy, right?
Well, and I've worked with through this project students who have had their own press conferences, they've been published in books, they've been on the radio, they've led circles, they've collected, they're doing mutual aid. They're working alongside the communities to deliver food here in Minneapolis. They're raising money for people to have rent so they so they can we still have a number of people who are homebound because they're afraid to leave their homes. And the students are involved in every aspect of that. But I also want to be attentive to, we're seeing a number of students on the autism spectrum, whether we're identifying it more because we can now diagnose it, or whether there's something occurring through social media that's increasing the diagnosis. We know that we're seeing larger numbers of students that are having social challenges, including depression and anxiety, right? And and you know, I think that as Roger and some of you have pointed out, the one of the most powerful ways to work on that are project-based learning
Mhm.
and to find something with each student that surfaces their gifts and allows them to have, as Richard Trotta said, agency in discovering what's of interest to them. And I think we have to just continually work on surfacing their gifts and try to um, bring that out. But that takes, and I've worked with schools here locally that are just really good at that project-based learning. But that's more prevalent in the charter schools and the self-governed schools that are teacher-led than in our public schools. So we're trying really hard to bring that within the public schools, but um, they have all their mandates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the problem with public schools. My program runs after school for that reason. But the problem with after school programs, you don't get, all the students or a good portion of them. So, but yeah, you're right. Project-based learning is very powerful. And if we can get more schools to participate and using that strategy, it'd be a big difference.
Well, I think one of the things that helps to convince them is better outcomes as far as education are concerned. I mean, if you can tie project-based learning to better outcomes in terms of, engagement, grades, just also mental health. I mean, all those
Oh,
things
yeah.
affect it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you do the studies and you do your presentation correctly, I think it's interesting. Earlier, the comments were made about it seems like there's a lot more anxiety and there's a lot more problems, in terms of, kids adapting and so forth. But I think there's more sensitivity actually on the part of people who are making observations about this, because I can tell you that I was a wreck when I was in, like, especially when I was in what they call middle school. We call it junior high. But
Yeah,
when
that's
I
true.
went into seventh grade, I mean, I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, seriously. And nobody noticed, it was just like all the kids were crazy, There were fights and there were, all kinds of bullying and things like that. But very, very little was done about it. It didn't seem like there was any real concern about it. But I think there's actually more concern about those things now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, in that situation, Roger, if you don't have safety and you don't feel that you're being seen, that just saps out the learning.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I was a good example of that because I was a very, pretty good student up until that time. And then I started failing and I got put into a lower section. And
yeah, because
yeah,
that's what
because
happens.
it was just, I was overwhelmed emotionally and there was nobody noticed. My parents
No,
noticed, but nobody at the school did, It
no,
was just,
exactly. And that's one of the drawbacks to, public education. It's based on numbers, and it's based on academics, and it's based on seats, and students get lost, and especially students who are on the bubble, like you were on the bubble. Luckily, you went the right way, but it could have gone the wrong direction as well.
well, I mean, that's debatable. No, I had my challenges, but I came through somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
but yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I was just using it as an illustration of maybe a different culture that exists now, where there may be a greater sensitivity and therefore a greater awareness of the problems. But if there's a marked, um, I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's possible the pandemic had an impact in terms of preferences for virtual situations,
mm,
and also a lot of the gaming that kids are engaged with. I mean, there was nothing like that when I was growing up. So, but game theory, it's interesting because I'm participating in this thing called Limicon, which is a lot of different things going on where there's a lot of different issues that are being raised, and a number of people, younger people, who were in their maybe 20s and 30s have their perspective is gaming, and
yeah,
their a lot of their analysis is reflective of their experience gaming and game design and so forth. And I think that's very interesting because when I had the opportunity to interact with children, I found that games were a really great way to engage them and educate them, and just it just seemed like a more natural flow. It was something that they were more interested in. And project-based learning, while it's not a game per se, it does have all some of those qualities, doesn't it? It has, kind of a whole set of rules that you follow and, a process that you go through. And if you can tie it into something that they find enjoyable already, I think that could really make a big difference.
Hmm. I'm wondering also, I know Amelia posted something in the chat about the Baha'i Junior Youth Program that I guess I think you're involved with, Amelia. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that program and how say a junior youth group, however that's defined, how they're actually formed. How do we engage youth in junior youth into that space? Would you mind talking a little bit about it?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, yeah, so yeah, junior youth groups are formed in many different ways. I think the example that Kate had brought up actually reminds me of this one group that started recently where there were these middle schoolers who were interested in baking, and so they decided to come together and start to bake. And so me and another girl were sort of their mentor figures right now. So the way the program works is with middle schoolers and then either high schoolers or college age or anyone really who's older who can act as a mentor figure, and bringing groups of middle schoolers together to be able to build friendship. Um, and so making sure to do activities that they're interested in, and to build the capacity to look at the world around them and see what are the challenges that their community is facing, that they might be facing in their home lives. Um, and to come together and think of things that they can do about it. And to address whatever sort of like interpersonal things might come up within that space, and really being a mentor sort of for all areas of life. Um, and yeah, I've experienced like meeting middle schoolers either through a school, or just sort of out in my daily life. Um, like in my neighborhood, like making sure I'm like talking to people as I'm walking down the street. If there's, if kids are in the park, like starting conversations with them, like just getting to know what are on the minds of young people. Um, and just being open to having those conversations and then inviting them to join a group, to maybe try and start to form a group. Um, I've also had experience doing like door-to-door outreach within my community too to try and meet people. So there's been many different avenues. Maybe also like if I meet a parent, sharing about the group with them and just sort of being open to sharing with everybody, and seeing who is interested. Um, and yeah, it's led to very like a whole range of different like service projects that have come out of this. One example that I was really glad was able to happen was a coat drive. And there was this one junior youth who he himself didn't have like a good winter coat for Boston. And we're like, okay, we need to do something about that. And his first idea was to kind of find other organizations that were doing something about this. And then he saw there was some like, I think, citywide funding pool for winter clothing. So he wanted to go there. And then we're like, let's try and think even more locally. Like, what can we do maybe with our neighbors and think about other people within our neighborhood that might be facing these same challenges. So we ended up deciding that we were going to go door to door to see if anyone in our neighborhood had winter coats that they were no longer using. And then also talking to neighbors to figure out if there were other people who were going through the same issue. And so that's what we did. And through like being out, people seeing us, more kids decided that they wanted to join. And so we all went around, talked about why we were doing this. Um, and yeah, I think it was a very empowering experience because these like 11 and 12-year-olds got to see like, okay, I'm experiencing this challenge. Um, we can turn to each other and we can discuss this, and then we can turn to our neighbors and we can try to involve them as well. And, we're developing the skills of planning together. We are learning problem solving. We are becoming more comfortable talking with strangers. Um, and then we're seeing a project from beginning to end. And someone was talking about how like gratifying it is to do that. And there's something, inherently kind of like joyful and empowering that comes from that. Um, and so, yeah, I think like by being able to sort of serve as like a mentor figure to young people and sort of guiding them through this process, um, I think there was a very like strong sense of empowerment that came from that. Um, and that led to opportunities to speak to parents as well, to like, have conversations with parents, bring parents together too. Um, yeah, and there definitely were like I think there's always a lot of challenges, and kids who don't get along with each other, but not allowing that to to stop the progress, like finding ways to address it. Um, and yeah, so that's some of the experiences that I've had with the junior youth empowerment program.
Wow, that's really great. That's fascinating. You're doing great work. I did just peek at your website, so I wanted to ask you whether, when you're coordinating between different groups, do they use any virtual or any degree of virtual interaction, meetings, and so forth, or is it mainly in person?
So it's mainly in person, but there are junior youth groups that are all over the country. I'm sure wherever you guys are, there are junior youth groups like not too far away. And it's something that anyone can decide that they want to be a part of and engage with. And so most of the groups are like happening in person, but a lot of learning is constantly being shared. So there maybe are virtual spaces where the like mentors of these groups are coming together to share reflections.
Yeah, the reason I ask is we are considering working on a project that Rich and I
Mhm.
and that will actually link schools and different youth groups from different communities
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
Um, so I was just, as opposed to, I mean, you can arrange to have them meet in person, but to
Right.
have an ongoing relationship, ongoing collaboration, it would seem that it would be more practical if they're divided, in terms of
Mhm.
geography. But are you a member of Weave? Are you already signed up with Weave or not? I mean,
I'm not, no.
are you interested?
I would
Because
be, yeah. I just get the newsletters and I'm like everything here is so great.
Mhm.
yeah, okay. Well, I just put the address in the chat. I don't this isn't I don't know if this is clickable, but it's a very easy address. It's just weaving.us. And if you just go there, you can't click on it because I didn't put all the little fancy stuff in there. But if you go to weaving.us on your browser, you'll go
Hmm.
directly to Weave, and it will it might be an interesting place for you to network a little more, to be
Okay.
able to share what you're doing with more people.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
sure. That's what we're all about, weaving, right?
We,
Yeah. So actually we're at the top of the hour and I know some people have already dropped off, but I hope this has been a an interesting evening for you getting to know some of the other people. And it can be just the beginning. Another plug for Weave. Weave has an education group that there's a discussion area there. There's people that you can contact. And we try to do this every month. So I have a list of everyone's email addresses and I was sending anything out, any kind of a notification out to whoever is interested in attending. And I certainly hope that you will be back and share some more stories with us, everyone. And are there any last thoughts before we are set off on our own ways?
Just thank you. This has been great.
Well, thank you for being part of it. I really appreciate it. I think we all do. Kate, any last thoughts?
I just want to share that for the past few years, I've been working on the memoir of one of our revered Black elders here in the Twin Cities, and her book just came out. And it's her life. She was one of the first Black social workers in the Minneapolis public schools, and it's her work to really build racial equity within education. And it's a lovely story, but also I'm going to be hosting a launch for the book through Weave. And so it'd be great to, work with Roger and make sure you're all invited.
Yeah. Do you have a link to your book?
Yeah, let me pull that out. So I mean it's Katie's, and we did through Sweet Potato Comfort Pie, we did an education series about Katie as well. And I will put that link in too. It was called, we did it with Sweet Potato Comfort Pie in collaboration with the University of Minnesota. and it was called the Katie Sample Series. Just a very, very special lady. Just so amazing. And so I'm excited for more people to be inspired by her life and her story.
Will she be able to attend
She
the,
will be, yes, she's
uh,
92 years old, but she's very excited to be part of all this.
oh, I look forward to meeting her. Yeah, definitely.
She's a lot of fun. Yeah, she's met Erica. We actually have a planning meeting on Monday with Erica and Marianne McGrail, and you're welcome to come, Roger.
Monday? What
It's
time?
Monday. Let's see. It's going to
Because
be
I have my
Monday,
village stuff Monday too.
Monday at 2 o'clock.
Why don't you send me a link?
If you
I'm not
want,
sure.
it'd be lovely to have you. And of course, Jay Marie, you could do it too. But it's Katie changed my life because she had these biannual conferences on successes in educating Black children, and all of our work sprang from that.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. That should be a lot of very
Yeah.
interesting and fun too.
And Roger, I'll let you know, you maybe I told you yesterday, I've ordered a book for you that's coming to your door. So
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to that too. So,
yeah, yeah.
I think that again, this has been great having everybody here. And thanks for coming, Kate and Rich. I haven't
Mhm.
seen you, but I know you're there and
Oh,
everyone else.
oh,
Good to hear from everybody. Everybody have
Yeah.
a nice evening.
oh,
Yeah,
well,
okay. Everyone have a good evening.